One night, one drink, one kiss caught by the wrong penthouse camera. The amber liquid burned down Maya Rodriguez's throat as she tilted her head back, finishing the whiskey in one desperate gulp. The hotel bar's dim lighting cast shadows across her tear-stained cheeks, and she could barely make out the sympathetic expression of the bartender, who had been watching her nurse the same drink for over an hour. Her hands trembled as she set the glass down on the mahogany bar, the sound echoing through the nearly empty lounge of the Whitmore Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago. "Rough night?" The deep, gravelly voice came from her left, and Maya turned to see a man sliding onto the bar stool beside her. Even through her haze of heartbreak and alcohol, she couldn't help but notice his striking presence. Dark hair slightly tousled, sharp jawline shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of storm clouds. His suit probably cost more than her monthly rent, but there was something approachable about his crooked smile. "You could say that." Maya's voice came out hoarser than she'd intended. She brushed a strand of her long, dark hair behind her ear, suddenly self-conscious about her probably smeared mascara and the simple black dress she'd worn to what was supposed to be a romantic dinner with her boyfriend of 3 years. Ex-boyfriend now. She corrected herself bitterly. The stranger signaled the bartender. "2 more of whatever the lady was having," he said, then turned back to Maya. "I'm James, by the way, James Wellington." Maya. She didn't offer her last name, partly because she was still too raw from David's betrayal to trust anyone, and partly because something about this James Wellington seemed familiar, though she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales like this one. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our viewers around the world. The bartender, a kind-faced man in his 50s with graying temples, placed 2 fresh glasses of whiskey in front of them. James raised his glass toward Maya. "To terrible nights that lead to unexpected encounters." Despite everything, Maya found herself almost smiling. "2 unexpected encounters," she agreed, clinking her glass against his. This time, she sipped the whiskey instead of downing it, feeling the warmth spread through her chest and ease some of the tight knot of pain that had been sitting there since she'd walked into David's apartment unannounced and found him with his arms around his coworker, Sarah. "So," James said, settling more comfortably on his bar stool and angling his body toward her, "Want to talk about what brought you here? Sometimes it helps to unload on a stranger." Maya studied his face, looking for signs of the predatory interest she'd learned to recognize after years of dating in Chicago. Instead, she found genuine curiosity and something that looked like understanding. "You first," she challenged. "What's your excuse for drinking alone in a hotel bar at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night?" James chuckled, a low sound that sent an unexpected flutter through Maya's stomach. "Fair enough. I just came from what was supposed to be a business dinner. Turns out the potential business partner was more interested in my family's money than in any actual business proposal." He took a sip of his whiskey, his expression growing more serious. "It's amazing how many people suddenly want to be your friend when they find out your last name." Maya felt a pang of sympathy, though she couldn't quite relate to the problem of having too much money. Her own struggles were decidedly more blue-collar, working 2 jobs to afford her small apartment in Wicker Park, sending money home to help her mother with medical bills, and dating men who seemed to think her dreams of becoming a graphic designer were cute hobbies rather than serious career aspirations. "Your turn," James prompted gently. Maya found herself opening up to this stranger in a way that surprised her. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe it was the genuine interest in his gray eyes, but the words started pouring out. "I caught my boyfriend cheating tonight. 3 years together, and I find out he's been sleeping with his coworker for months." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "The worst part is, I should have seen it coming. All those late nights at work, all those times he seemed distracted when we were together. I trusted him." "I'm sorry," James said, and Maya could hear the sincerity in his voice. "That's a terrible thing to go through. The really pathetic part is that I actually went to his place tonight to surprise him. I'd been working overtime for weeks to save up for a weekend trip to Wisconsin Dells for his birthday." Maya laughed bitterly. Instead, I got the surprise of my lifetime. James was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. You know, I've learned that people show you who they really are when they think no one's watching. Your ex-boyfriend showed you who he is. That says nothing about you and everything about him. Maya looked at him more closely. You sound like you speak from experience. Unfortunately, yes. Though my experiences have been more about people wanting to use me rather than cheat on me. James's expression darkened slightly. It gets exhausting, never knowing if someone likes you or for what you can provide them. The conversation continued to flow as they ordered another round, then another. Maya found herself laughing for the first time all day, as James told her stories about disastrous business meetings and well-meaning but misguided attempts by his mother to set him up with suitable women from their social circle. Let me guess, Maya said, feeling more relaxed than she had in months. Debutante balls and cotillion parties? You have no idea, James groaned. Last month, my mother invited 12 different women to our family's charity gala, and somehow they all ended up at my table. It was like speed dating, but with more champagne and higher stakes. Maya giggled, the sound surprising her. She'd forgotten she could feel lighthearted, even after the devastating evening she'd had. That sounds awful, but also kind of hilarious. It was a nightmare, James confirmed, but he was grinning now too. One woman spent the entire evening talking about her prize-winning Persian cats. Another kept asking me about my portfolio, not my business portfolio, my stock portfolio, and a third one actually brought her own photographer to take pictures of us together. No! Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. I swear on my grandmother's pearls, James said solemnly, though his eyes were twinkling with mischief. She said she wanted to document the moment we met for our future children to see. Maya nearly choked on her whiskey. That's either incredibly romantic or completely insane. I'm leaning toward completely insane, James said, especially since she'd known me for all of 20 minutes at that point. As the night wore on, Maya found herself genuinely enjoying James's company. He was funny and self-deprecating in a way that seemed genuine rather than calculated. He listened when she talked about her work as a part-time graphic designer and her side job waiting tables at a diner in Lincoln Park. He didn't seem to judge her for her modest circumstances, and he asked thoughtful questions about her art and her dreams. I've always wanted to start my own design firm, Maya admitted, surprising herself with the confession. She rarely talked about her bigger dreams, having learned that most people either dismissed them as unrealistic or offered condescending advice about being more practical. What's stopping you? James asked. Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. Money, mostly, and experience. It's hard to build a portfolio when you're working 2 jobs just to pay rent. I do freelance work when I can, but it's not steady enough to rely on. What kind of design work do you do? James leaned forward, his interest seeming genuine. Mostly logos and branding for small businesses. I did the signage for a coffee shop in my neighborhood, and some marketing materials for a local bakery. Maya felt herself warming to the subject despite her earlier cynicism. I love the challenge of figuring out how to visually represent what a business is all about. You know? How to capture their personality and values in something as simple as a logo or a color scheme. James nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Visual branding is incredibly important, especially for small businesses trying to establish themselves. Something in his tone made Maya study his face more carefully. You sound like you know something about business. A little, James said with what Maya was beginning to recognize as his characteristic understatement. I work in consulting, helping businesses grow and develop. Before Maya could ask more questions about his work, James was signaling the bartender again. Last call was 10 minutes ago, the older man said apologetically. I can give you folks 5 more minutes, but then I'll need to close up. Maya glanced at her phone and was shocked to see it was nearly 1 in the morning. She'd been talking to James for almost 3 hours, and it felt like it had been 30 minutes. I should probably go, she said reluctantly. Despite her earlier heartbreak, she'd enjoyed the evening more than she'd expected. Let me walk you out, James offered, standing and leaving money on the bar. More money than their drinks had cost, Maya noticed. Are you driving? Taking the L, Maya replied, gathering her purse and the light jacket she'd brought. My car's in the shop. This late? That's not safe. Let me call you a cab, James said, pulling out his phone. I can't afford a cab from downtown to Wicker Park, Maya protested. The L is fine. I take it all the time. James paused, his phone halfway to his ear. For a moment, Maya thought he might argue, or, worse, offer to pay for her cab, which would have been mortifying. Instead, he said, Then let me ride with you. Make sure you get home safely. You don't live near Wicker Park, Maya said, though she wasn't sure how she knew that. Something about his expensive suit and his manner suggested he lived somewhere much more upscale. No, but I don't have anywhere I need to be tomorrow morning, James said. And call me old-fashioned, but I don't feel right letting a woman travel alone on public transportation at 1 in the morning. Maya felt a flutter of something. Appreciation, maybe, or attraction. But she pushed it down. She'd just gotten out of a 3-year relationship hours ago, and she didn't trust her judgment when it came to men. That's sweet, but really, I'll be fine. How about this? James said as they walked toward the hotel lobby. Let me at least walk you to the station and wait with you until the train comes. No arguments about going all the way to Wicker Park, just making sure you're safely on the train. Maya considered this. It seemed reasonable, and despite having just met him, she felt safer with James than she would have alone. Okay, she agreed, but just to the station. The November air was crisp and cold as they stepped outside the Whitmore Grand. Maya pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders, wishing she'd brought something warmer. Chicago in late fall was unpredictable, warm enough during the day to fool you into thinking you didn't need a coat, then cold enough at night to make you regret that decision. Cold. James noticed her shivering and, without asking, shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders. You don't have to. Maya started to protest, but James cut her off. My grandmother would haunt me if I let a lady freeze while I was warm, he said with a grin. Besides, I run hot, always have. The jacket was warm from his body heat and smelled faintly of expensive cologne and something else she couldn't identify, something clean and masculine that made her want to lean closer. Instead, she pulled it more tightly around herself and fell into step beside him as they walked toward the nearest L station. Thank you, Maya said quietly. For tonight, I mean. I came to that bar feeling like my world was ending and you made me remember that there are still good people out there. James glanced at her, and in the streetlight, Maya could see something complicated cross his features. I'm glad I could help, he said. For what it's worth, your ex-boyfriend is an idiot. Any man who would cheat on someone like you doesn't deserve you. Someone like me? Maya asked, curious about his phrasing. James was quiet for a few steps, and Maya thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than it had been all evening. Smart, funny, passionate about your work. Beautiful, obviously, but that's not what I meant. You have this warmth about you, this genuineness. It's rare. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, and not from the cold. You don't really know me, she pointed out. We just met a few hours ago. True, James acknowledged, but sometimes you can tell a lot about a person from how they treat strangers. You were polite to the bartender even though you were clearly upset. You asked about my problems even though you were dealing with your own. You're not bitter, even though you have every right to be. They'd reached the L station and Maya could see the next train was due in 8 minutes according to the electronic sign. She felt an unexpected reluctance to say goodbye to James, which worried her. She'd been burned badly that evening, and the last thing she needed was to develop feelings for another man, especially one who seemed to come from a completely different world than hers. This is me, she said, gesturing toward the turnstiles. James nodded, but he made no move to leave. Maya, he said, and something in his tone made her look up at him. I know this is going to sound crazy, and I know you just went through something terrible tonight, but would you maybe like to have coffee sometime? Just coffee, he added quickly. No pressure, no expectations, I'd like to see you again. Maya's heart did something complicated in her chest. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately. She'd enjoyed his company more than she'd enjoyed anyone's in a long time, and there was definitely an attraction there. But the rational part of her brain, the part that had been hurt just hours earlier, urged caution. I don't know, she said honestly. Tonight it was really bad. I'm not sure I'm ready to date anyone right now. I understand, James said, and he seemed to mean it. But I'm not asking you to date me. I'm asking if you'd like to have coffee with someone who thinks you're interesting and would like to get to know you better. No timeline, no pressure. Just coffee. Maya looked at him, studying his face in the harsh fluorescent lights of the station. His expression was hopeful but not pushy, and she found herself nodding before she'd fully made the decision. Okay, she said. Coffee. But somewhere public. And you should know that I have terrible taste in men, so you're probably making a mistake. James laughed, the sound echoing off the tiled walls of the station. I'll take my chances. Can I have your number? Maya recited her phone number, watching as James entered it into his contacts. The train was approaching now, its headlight visible in the distance. I'll call you tomorrow, James promised. Well, later today, technically. Not too early, Maya warned. I'm going to need at least 12 hours to recover from tonight. Noted, James said solemnly. No calls before noon. The train pulled into the station with a screech of brakes and the mechanical voice announcing the stops. Maya started to shrug out of James's jacket, but he stopped her. Keep it, he said. You can give it back when we have coffee. Maya wanted to protest. The jacket was clearly expensive and she barely knew him, but the train doors were opening and she needed to board. Thank you, she called over the noise of the train, for everything. Thank you, James called back, for making this the best worst night I've had in a long time. Maya found a seat by the window and waved as the train pulled away from the station. James remained on the platform, hands in his pockets, until the train disappeared into the tunnel. During the 20-minute ride to her stop, Maya found herself replaying the evening. Just 6 hours earlier, she'd been getting ready for a romantic dinner with David, choosing her outfit carefully and stopping to buy flowers for his apartment. She'd been planning to talk to him about moving in together, maybe even hint about their future. Instead, she'd discovered that their entire relationship had been a lie. But then there had been James, appearing like some kind of guardian angel in an expensive suit. Maya wasn't naive enough to believe in love at first sight or fairy tale endings, but there had been something special about their connection. The way he'd listened to her. Really listened, without trying to fix her problems or minimize her pain. The way he'd made her laugh even when she'd felt like crying. The way he'd looked at her like she was someone worth knowing. Maya's stop came too quickly, and she reluctantly left the warmth of the train car for the cold November night. As she walked the 3 blocks to her apartment, James's jacket wrapped around her like a hug. She found herself hoping he would actually call. She also found herself hoping she'd have the courage to say yes when he did. Her apartment was a studio on the 2nd floor of a converted Victorian house, small but cozy, with exposed brick walls and tall windows that let in lots of natural light during the day. Maya had decorated it with finds from thrift stores and flea markets, creating a space that felt warm and personal despite its modest size. As she got ready for bed, Maya caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. Her makeup was indeed smeared, her hair was messed up from the wind, and she was wearing a stranger's jacket that was 3 sizes too big for her. She should have looked ridiculous, but instead, she looked alive. There was color in her cheeks and a light in her eyes that had been missing for months. Maya hung James's jacket carefully on the back of her desk chair, where she could see it from her bed. She fell asleep surprisingly easily, considering the emotional upheaval of the evening, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't dream about David. The next morning, or rather, the same morning, since she'd only gotten 4 hours of sleep, Maya woke to sunlight streaming through her windows and the smell of coffee from the cafe downstairs. For a moment, she felt disoriented, unable to remember why she felt both terrible and oddly hopeful at the same time. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back. David's betrayal hit her like a physical blow, just as painful in the light of day as it had been the night before. But overlaying the hurt was the memory of James's smile, his laugh, the way he'd looked at her like she was someone special. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message, and her heart leaped before she remembered that James had promised not to call before noon. Sure enough, the message was from her best friend and co-worker, Sarah Chen. "Girl, where are you? You were supposed to open the diner this morning. Marcus is losing his mind." Maya groaned and checked the time. It was almost 10, and she was supposed to have been at work at 7. She quickly typed back, "Family emergency. Be there in 30 minutes. So sorry." It wasn't exactly a lie, Maya reasoned, as she threw on her work uniform and grabbed James's jacket. Her emotional family had definitely had an emergency last night. The diner where Maya worked part-time was a classic Chicago establishment, all red vinyl booths and black and white checkered floors. It served hearty breakfasts to construction workers, office employees, and university students from the nearby campuses. Maya had been working there for 2 years, ever since she'd graduated from art school, and discovered that a bachelor's degree in graphic design didn't automatically translate into steady employment. Marcus Kowalski, the diner's owner, was a gruff man in his 60s who barked orders and complained constantly, but had never actually fired anyone, and was known to slip extra food to customers who looked like they couldn't afford their meals. "Rodriguez," he bellowed the moment Maya walked through the back door. "Where the hell have you been?" "I'm sorry, Marcus. I had a family emergency," Maya said, tying her apron around her waist and grabbing an order pad. "Your family better be in the hospital or jail," Marcus grumbled, but his expression softened slightly when he got a good look at Maya's face. "You look like hell, kiddo. You okay?" "I'll be fine," Maya assured him, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. The morning rush was brutal, made worse by Maya's lack of sleep and emotional exhaustion. She mixed up orders, spilled coffee on herself, and nearly dropped a plate of eggs Benedict. By the time the lunch crowd started to thin out around 2 o'clock, she was ready to crawl under a table and take a nap. "Rough night?" Sarah asked, sidling up to Maya during a brief lull. Sarah was petite and energetic, with short black hair and expressive brown eyes. She'd been Maya's closest friend since their first week of art school, and she had an uncanny ability to read Maya's moods. "You could say that," Maya said, echoing the words she'd spoken to James the night before. "David and I broke up." "What?" Sarah's voice carried across the diner, earning them curious looks from several customers. She lowered her voice and grabbed Maya's arm. "What happened? Are you okay? Do I need to key his car?" Despite everything, Maya found herself smiling. "No car keying necessary, though I appreciate the offer." Maya gave Sarah the abbreviated version of the previous night's events, leaving out the part about James. She wasn't ready to talk about him yet, wasn't sure what there was to say. For all she knew, he wouldn't call, and the whole thing would remain a pleasant memory from an otherwise terrible night. "I'm so sorry, honey," Sarah said, pulling Maya into a hug. "David is a complete asshole, and you deserve so much better." "Everyone keeps telling me that," Maya said. "I'm starting to believe it might be true." "It is true," Sarah said firmly. "You're smart, talented, beautiful, and kind. Any guy would be lucky to have you." Maya's phone buzzed in her apron pocket. Sarah glanced at the clock on the wall. "It's only 2:30. Early for a lunch break text." Maya pulled out her phone, her heart rate picking up. The message was from an unknown number, but she knew who it was before she read it. "Hi, Maya. This is James from last night. I hope you got home safely and that you're feeling better today. I was wondering if you'd like to have that coffee we talked about. There's a great little place called Intelligentsia in Lincoln Park if you're interested. Would tomorrow afternoon work for you? No pressure if you need more time." Maya read the message twice, her stomach doing little flips. "Okay, spill," Sarah demanded. "You have that look." "What look?" "The look you get when something interesting happens. Who's texting you?" Maya sighed, realizing she wasn't going to be able to keep James a secret from Sarah for long. She told her friend about meeting James at the hotel bar, carefully editing out some of the more personal details of their conversation. Wait, Sarah interrupted. You met a gorgeous, wealthy, charming man who made you forget about David for 3 hours, and you're hesitating about having coffee with him? What is wrong with you? I just got out of a 3-year relationship last night, Maya protested. Literally last night. Don't you think it's too soon? For marriage and babies, yes. For coffee with an attractive man who made you smile? Absolutely not. Sarah studied Maya's face. Unless you don't want to see him again. Did he give you bad vibes? Maya thought about it. No, actually the opposite. He was nice, genuinely nice. He listened to me, made me laugh. Didn't try to get me drunk or take advantage of the fact that I was upset. Then what's the problem? I don't know, Maya admitted. Maybe I'm scared. David really hurt me, Sarah. I don't know if I trust my judgment about men anymore. Sarah's expression softened. Honey, David hurt you because he's a selfish jerk, not because you have bad judgment. You dated him for 3 years, and by all accounts he treated you well until he didn't. Sometimes people change, or sometimes they show you who they really are when they think they can get away with it. Maya thought about James's similar words from the night before. That's basically what James said too. Smart man, I like him already. Sarah grinned. Come on, Maya. It's coffee, not a commitment ceremony. What's the worst that could happen? Maya looked down at her phone again. James's message was polite but not pushy, leaving her room to say no without feeling guilty about it. That consideration, combined with her memory of how comfortable she'd felt talking to him, made her decision. She typed back, Hi James, coffee sounds nice. Tomorrow afternoon works for me. What time? The response came within minutes. How about 3 p.m.? I'll meet you there. Maya confirmed the time and then spent the rest of her shift trying not to think about what she'd gotten herself into. She succeeded about half the time. That evening, Maya's phone rang as she was attempting to distract herself with Netflix and leftover Chinese takeout. She glanced at the caller ID, expecting to see Sarah's name or maybe her mother calling from their small town in southern Illinois. Instead, she saw David's name. Maya stared at the phone for a long moment, letting it ring. She wasn't ready to talk to him yet. Wasn't sure if she'd ever be ready. She let the call go to voicemail, then immediately regretted it when her phone chimed to indicate he'd left a message. Against her better judgment, she played the voicemail. Maya, it's me. David's voice sounded tired and strained. I know you don't want to talk to me right now, and I don't blame you. What you saw last night. God, Maya, I'm so sorry. It's not what you think. Well, it is what you think, but it's not. Can you please just call me back? Let me explain. I love you, Maya. I know I screwed up, but I love you. Maya deleted the message without listening to it again. There was nothing David could say that would make what she'd seen okay. She'd walked into his apartment and found him kissing Sarah from his office, his hands tangled in her hair, her legs wrapped around his waist as he pressed her against the kitchen counter. Even if it was the first time, which Maya doubted, it was a betrayal she couldn't forgive. Her phone rang again 20 minutes later, David's name appearing on the screen once more. This time, Maya turned off the phone entirely. The next day passed slowly. Maya worked the morning shift at the diner, then spent the afternoon at her other job, designing a logo for a new yoga studio in Bucktown. The work was engaging enough to distract her from her nerves about seeing James again. But as 3 o'clock approached, she found herself checking her appearance in every reflective surface she passed. She'd chosen her outfit carefully. Dark jeans, a soft gray sweater, and ankle boots with just enough heel to make her feel confident without looking like she was trying too hard. She'd left her hair down and kept her makeup simple, wanting to look like herself rather than some idealized version of herself. Intelligentsia Coffee on Broadway was busy for a Saturday afternoon, filled with students from nearby universities, young professionals, and the usual assortment of Chicago coffee enthusiasts. Maya arrived a few minutes early and found a small table near the window where she could watch for James. She didn't have to wait long. At exactly 3 o'clock, she saw him approaching through the large front windows. He looked different in daylight and casual clothes, jeans and a dark green sweater that brought out his gray eyes, but no less attractive. If anything, he looked more approachable, less like the mysterious stranger from the hotel bar, and more like someone she might actually know. James spotted her through the window and smiled, raising his hand in a small wave. Maya felt her heart do that fluttery thing again and reminded herself that this was just coffee, just a chance to get to know someone new. "Hi," James said as he approached her table. "You look beautiful." Maya felt herself blushing. "Thank you, you look different, more relaxed." "Saturday clothes," James explained, settling into the chair across from her. "I spend too much of my life in suits. Can I get you something to drink?" "A latte would be great, thanks." James returned from the counter with Maya's latte and a black coffee for himself. "So," he said, sitting back down, "how are you feeling today? Better, I hope." "Better," Maya confirmed, still processing everything but better. "Thank you for asking." They fell into conversation easily, picking up where they'd left off the night before. James asked about Maya's morning at the diner, and she found herself telling him stories about the regular customers and Marcus's gruff but caring management style. In return, James told her about his weekend plans, a charity fundraiser his mother was organizing, a business meeting that had been moved to Sunday morning, a standing basketball game with his college friends. "You play basketball?" Maya asked, trying to picture James in athletic clothes rather than expensive suits. "Every Sunday morning for the past 8 years, James confirmed. "We started in college, and somehow we've managed to keep it going, even though we're all busy with work and relationships and real adult responsibilities." "That's nice," Maya said, and she meant it. It must be good to have that consistency. Those friendships. It is. Some of them are the only people who knew me before. James paused, seeming to catch himself. "Before my life got complicated." Maya sensed there was more to that story, but she didn't push. Instead, she asked, "What position do you play?" "Point guard, usually. I'm not the tallest, but I'm quick and I can see the whole court." Maya could picture that. James directing his teammates, staying calm under pressure, making split-second decisions. It fit with what she'd observed about his personality. "What about you?" James asked. "Any sports?" "I ran track in high school," Maya admitted. "Sprints mostly, but I haven't been on a track in years. Now my exercise is mostly walking around the city and occasionally remembering to do yoga." "Do you miss it, running competitively?" Maya considered the question. "Sometimes. I loved the feeling of pushing myself, seeing how fast I could go. And I loved being part of a team, having that shared goal." "What made you stop?" "College, then work, then life," Maya said with a shrug. "You know how it is. The things you think are important when you're 18 don't always translate to adult life." James nodded thoughtfully. "I know exactly what you mean. I used to want to be a teacher." "Really?" Maya leaned forward, intrigued. "What would you have taught?" "History, probably. American history, maybe some world history. I loved the stories. The way everything connects to everything else." James's expression grew wistful. "I had this idea that I could inspire kids to see the patterns, to understand how the past shapes the present." "What changed your mind?" "Family expectations," James said simply. "My father made it clear that teaching wasn't a suitable career for a Wellington. Too much education, not enough profit," he said. Maya felt a pang of sympathy. "That's terrible. You should be able to choose your own career." "Should is a complicated word when you come from money," James said, though he didn't sound bitter about it. "There are expectations, responsibilities to the family business. Sometimes your choices affect more than just you." Maya wanted to ask more about his family and their business, but something in James's expression warned her off the topic. Instead, she said, "It's never too late, you know, to teach. You could volunteer with literacy programs, or tutor kids, or even go back to school for a teaching certificate." James smiled, and Maya could see genuine warmth in his eyes. I've actually thought about that. There's a literacy program at one of the community centers downtown. I've been considering getting involved. You should do it, Maya encouraged. The world needs more people who care about education. They spent the next hour talking about books, movies, travel, and their childhoods. Maya learned that James had grown up in Lake Forest, attended private schools, and spent summers at the family's house in Door County, Wisconsin. He learned that Maya was the first person in her family to graduate from college, that she'd grown up in a town of 8,000 people where everyone knew everyone else's business, and that she'd moved to Chicago with 2 suitcases and $500 to her name. That must have been terrifying, James said when Maya told him about her move to the city. It was, Maya agreed. But it was also exciting. For the first time in my life, I was completely anonymous. I could be anyone I wanted to be. And who did you want to be? Maya thought about it. Someone independent. Someone who created things that mattered. Someone who didn't have to ask permission to chase her dreams. I think you've succeeded, James said quietly. Something in his tone made Maya look at him more closely. What about you? Who did you want to be when you came to Chicago? James was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, someone who could make his own choices. Someone who could be valued for more than his last name or his bank account. And have you succeeded? James's smile was rueful. I'm working on it. Maya was about to ask what he meant when her phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen and saw David's name again. I'm sorry, she said to James, declining the call. My ex has been trying to reach me. The one from Thursday night? Yeah, he keeps calling, leaving voicemails. I think he wants to explain what I saw. Maya made air quotes around the word explain, her voice heavy with sarcasm. Are you going to talk to him? I don't know, Maya admitted. Part of me wants to hear what he has to say, if only to get closure. But part of me thinks there's nothing he could say that would make any difference. James leaned forward slightly. Can I give you some advice? Sure. Don't talk to him until you're ready, and don't let him pressure you into a conversation you don't want to have. You were the one who was hurt, which means you get to set the timeline for how this plays out. Maya felt a wave of gratitude toward James. David had been calling and texting constantly, and several of their mutual friends had already reached out to tell her she should at least hear him out. James was the first person to validate her right to take her time. Thank you, she said. I needed to hear that. I've been on the other side of a similar situation, James said. Not cheating, but betrayal. Someone I trusted used me for their own purposes, then expected me to forgive them because they were sorry. I let them pressure me into a conversation before I was ready, and it made everything worse. Maya wanted to ask for details, but James's expression suggested the memory was still painful. Instead, she said, How did you eventually handle it? I realized that forgiveness is something you do for yourself, not for the other person, and that forgiveness doesn't mean you have to let someone back into your life. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the afternoon light slanting through the coffee shop windows casting warm golden patterns on their table. I should probably go, Maya said eventually, glancing at her phone to check the time. It was nearly 5 o'clock and they'd been talking for 2 hours. I have some freelance work to finish tonight. Of course, James said, though he looked as reluctant to end the afternoon as Maya felt. Can I walk you to your car? I don't have a car, remember? It's in the shop. I'm taking the bus. Then let me give you a ride, James offered. It's the least I can do after keeping you here for 2 hours. Maya hesitated. Accepting a ride felt more intimate than meeting for coffee, like crossing a line from casual acquaintance to something more. On the other hand, the bus route from Lincoln Park to Wicker Park involved 2 transfers and would take over an hour. Okay, she decided. Thank you. James's car turned out to be a sleek black BMW sedan. Expensive, but not ostentatious. Maya settled into the leather passenger seat, trying not to think about how different this was from David's beat-up Honda Civic. Nice car, she commented as James pulled into traffic. It was a gift from my father, James said, and something in his tone suggested it hadn't been entirely welcome. He has very specific ideas about what constitutes an appropriate vehicle for a Wellington. Maya was beginning to pick up on the subtle tension between James and his family's expectations. It must be complicated, having a family name that comes with so much baggage. That's one way to put it, James agreed. Sometimes I think it would be easier to be completely anonymous, like you were when you moved to Chicago. Trust me, anonymity has its own challenges, Maya said. When no one knows your name, you have to work twice as hard to prove yourself. But at least people judge you on your own merits, rather than your family's reputation. Maya considered this. I suppose we all have our crosses to bear. They spent the drive talking about their neighborhoods. James was curious about Wicker Park, which he admitted he'd never explored despite living in Chicago for several years. Maya told him about the local art scene, the vintage shops, the small restaurants and bars that gave the area its character. It sounds like a great place to live, James said, as he pulled up in front of Maya's building. It is, Maya agreed. It's not fancy, but it feels like home. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt but made no move to get out of the car. She was enjoying James's company too much to want the afternoon to end. Maya, James said, and something in his tone made her turn to look at him. I had a really good time today. Me too, Maya admitted. Would you like to do this again sometime? Maybe dinner this time? Maya felt her pulse quicken. Coffee was one thing, but dinner felt like a real date. She wasn't sure if she was ready for that level of commitment, even to something as simple as a meal. She started, then stopped. James waited patiently for her to organize her thoughts. I like you, James. I really do, but I'm still figuring out what I want right now. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, James assured her. How about this? I'll give you my number, and you can call me when you're ready. No pressure, no timeline. Maya felt relief wash over her. That sounds perfect. James pulled out his business card and handed it to her. Maya glanced at it quickly before slipping it into her purse, noting the elegant letterhead and what appeared to be a downtown address. Thank you for today, Maya said, opening the car door. And for Thursday night, you've been really kind to me. It's been my pleasure, James said, and Maya could tell he meant it. Maya walked up the steps to her building, waving goodbye as James pulled away from the curb. She climbed the 2 flights to her apartment, her mind buzzing with thoughts about the afternoon. James's business card was still in her purse, and Maya pulled it out to examine it more closely. The letterhead read, Wellington Enterprises, with an address in the loop. Below James's name was the title, Vice President, Strategic Development. Maya stared at the card for a long moment. Wellington Enterprises. The name was familiar, though she couldn't immediately place where she'd heard it. She opened her laptop and did a quick Google search. The results made her stomach drop. Wellington Enterprises was one of Chicago's largest private investment firms, with holdings in real estate, technology, hospitality, and retail. The company had been founded in 1952 by James's grandfather and was currently run by his father, Robert Wellington. According to Forbes, the Wellington family was worth an estimated $8 billion. Maya sat back in her desk chair, feeling slightly dizzy. James wasn't just wealthy. He was obscenely, impossibly wealthy. His family owned half of downtown Chicago, including, she realized with a start, the Whitmore Grand Hotel where they'd met. She thought about their conversations over the past 2 days, about James's comments about family expectations and people wanting to use him for his money. She thought about his expensive clothes, his car, his casual mention of charity galas and business meetings. Maya had known James came from money, but she'd been thinking more along the lines of successful small business owner or well-paid lawyer. She hadn't imagined he was part of one of Chicago's most prominent families. The realization changed everything. What was she supposed to do with this information? James had clearly been trying to downplay his wealth, possibly to see if she was interested in him for himself rather than his money. Maya appreciated that impulse, but the scale of the deception felt overwhelming. She was a part-time waitress and struggling graphic designer who lived in a studio apartment and took the bus to work. He was a billionaire who probably owned buildings she couldn't afford to rent office space in. What could they possibly have in common beyond the artificial intimacy of two strangers meeting in a bar? Maya's phone rang, startling her out of her spiraling thoughts. This time, it wasn't David. It was her mother. "Hi, Mom," Maya answered, closing her laptop and trying to sound normal. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you doing? You sounded upset when we talked earlier this week." Maya had called her mother on Tuesday after a particularly difficult day, but she hadn't mentioned the problems she'd been having with David. Her mother worried enough about Maya living alone in the big city without adding relationship drama to the mix. "I'm doing better," Maya said, which was mostly true. "Work is good, and I've been getting more freelance clients." They talked for 20 minutes about Maya's work, her mother's garden, and the latest gossip from their small hometown. Maya found the familiar rhythms of the conversation soothing, a reminder of who she was beyond the confusion of the past few days. After hanging up, Maya made herself dinner and tried to focus on the logo design she'd promised to finish by Monday morning. But her mind kept wandering to James, to their conversation that afternoon, to the business card sitting on her desk like an accusation. She'd enjoyed his company, had felt a connection she hadn't experienced in years. But how much of that connection had been real, and how much had been based on the fiction that they were two people from similar backgrounds getting to know each other? Maya was still wrestling with these questions when her phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment her heart leaped, thinking it might be James. Instead, it was from David. "Please, Maya, just give me 5 minutes to explain. I know you're hurt, but there are things you don't understand. I love you." Maya stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. She might not know what she wanted from James, but she was absolutely certain she didn't want anything from David. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Maya's mood. She'd slept poorly, her dreams filled with confusing images of expensive hotel bars and men in suits who turned into strangers when she tried to get close to them. Maya had the day off from both her jobs, which should have been a relief, but instead felt like too much time to think. She forced herself to go for a run along the lakefront, hoping the exercise would clear her head. The November air was cold and damp, and Lake Michigan stretched out gray and choppy under the overcast sky. Maya usually found running meditative, but today her mind refused to quiet. Every step seemed to bring up new questions about James, about what his revelation meant, about whether she was overreacting to something that shouldn't matter. After all, she reasoned as she jogged past Montrose Harbor, James hadn't actually lied to her. He'd been vague about his work, but he hadn't claimed to be anything other than what he was. And his wealth didn't change the fact that he'd been kind to her, that he'd listened to her problems without judgment, that he'd made her laugh during one of the worst nights of her life. On the other hand, the wealth disparity between them was so enormous that it felt like they were living in different universes. Maya had student loans, credit card debt, and a checking account that rarely had more than a few $100s in it. James probably spent more on a single suit than Maya made in a month. By the time Maya returned to her apartment, she was no closer to resolving her feelings about the situation. She showered and made coffee, then settled at her desk to work on the yoga studio logo. The familiar process of playing with fonts and colors, of trying to capture a business's essence in visual form, provided some relief from her circular thoughts. She was deep in concentration when her phone rang around noon. The caller ID showed Sarah's name. "Hey girl." Sarah's voice was bright and curious. "How was your coffee date yesterday?" Maya had been dreading this call, knowing Sarah would want details about her afternoon with James. It was complicated. Complicated how? Did he turn out to be married, secretly gay, a serial killer? Worse, Maya said dryly. He's a billionaire. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Sarah said, "I'm sorry, did you just say billionaire with a B?" "With a very large B." Maya told Sarah about discovering James's true identity, about the Wellington family fortune, about feeling like she'd been living in a fantasy for the past 2 days. Wait, Sarah interrupted. You're upset because the gorgeous, charming man you've been getting to know turns out to be incredibly wealthy. You don't understand, Maya protested. This isn't just wealthy. This is private jet, own an island, never have to think about money again wealthy. We might as well be from different species. Okay, but did that change how you felt about him during your conversation yesterday? Maya thought about it. Well, no. I didn't know then. And did he treat you differently because you're not wealthy? No, Maya admitted reluctantly. Did he make you feel bad about your job or your apartment or anything else about your life? No, actually, he seemed genuinely interested in everything I told him about. Then what exactly is the problem? Maya struggled to articulate her concerns. Don't you think it's weird that he didn't tell me? I mean, if someone Googled his name, his family's net worth would be right there in the search results. Maya, you met this guy 3 days ago in a hotel bar when you were crying over your cheating ex-boyfriend. He probably didn't want to scare you off by leading with, "Hi, I'm James. My family owns half of Chicago. But what am I supposed to do with this information now? How am I supposed to act around him?" Like yourself, Sarah said firmly. The same way you've been acting. Maya, honey, you're overthinking this. So the guy has money. So what? You liked him before you knew, and he liked you without caring that you don't have money. Isn't that what matters? Maya wanted to argue, but she couldn't find fault with Sarah's logic. I don't know how to navigate this. What if his family hates me? What if I embarrass him at some fancy event? What if, Sarah cut her off. Maya, you're creating problems that don't exist yet. The man asked you out for coffee, not to marry him. Take it one step at a time. After hanging up with Sarah, Maya felt marginally better. Her friend had a point. She was probably overcomplicating the situation. James had been nothing but kind and respectful toward her, and his family's money didn't change the connection they'd felt during their conversations. Maya spent the rest of Sunday working on her design projects and trying not to think about James. She succeeded about half the time. Monday morning brought a return to routine. Maya worked the breakfast shift at the diner, then had a meeting with a potential new client in the afternoon. The yoga studio owner loved her preliminary logo designs and wanted to move forward with the project, which meant Maya would have enough money to pay her rent for another month, without dipping into her meager savings. That evening, Maya was settling down with leftover Thai food and a Netflix series when her phone rang. This time, it was James. Maya stared at the phone for several rings, her heart doing acrobatics in her chest. Finally, she answered. Hi, James. Hi, Maya. How are you doing? Good. Busy day, but good. You? Same, I was wondering. How are you feeling about everything? With your ex, I mean. Maya appreciated that he was checking in on her emotional state, rather than immediately asking her out again. Better each day. I think I'm finally accepting that it's really over. That's good. Accepting the end of something is usually the first step toward healing. They talked for a few minutes about Maya's day, her new client, the unpredictable November weather. The conversation felt comfortable and natural, just as it had during their coffee date. Maya, James said eventually, I was hoping we could see each other again soon. I know you said you needed time to figure things out, but I really enjoyed spending time with you on Saturday. Maya took a deep breath. This was it, the moment where she had to decide whether to acknowledge what she'd learned about him, or pretend she was still in the dark. James, can I ask you something? Of course. Is there anything you think I should know about you? Anything that might change how I see you? There was a long pause. Maya could almost hear James thinking, trying to figure out what she was really asking. Why do you ask? He said finally. I looked you up online after I got home Saturday, Maya admitted. I saw your business card and I was curious about Wellington Enterprises. Another pause, longer this time. What did you find? James asked quietly. Enough to realize that when you said your family has money, you were understating things a bit. James sighed. I'm sorry, Maya. Should have been more upfront with you. Why weren't you? Honestly? Because I liked the way you looked at me when you thought I was just some guy you met in a bar. Most people, when they hear the name Wellington, they either want something from me, or they decide I'm not worth knowing because I've never had to struggle for anything. I wanted you to know me before you knew about all that. Maya felt some of her anxiety ease. At least he was being honest with her now. I understand why you didn't tell me, she said. But James, this is a lot to process. I mean, your family is worth billions of dollars. I work 2 jobs just to afford a studio apartment. I know, James said. And I know how that might look to you. But Maya, my bank account doesn't change the conversations we've had or the way I feel about you. How do you feel about me? Maya asked, surprising herself with her directness. I think you're incredible, James said without hesitation. You're smart and funny and talented, and you have this warmth about you that I've never encountered before. When I'm talking to you, forget about all the complications in my life and just feel normal. Maya felt her heart do that fluttery thing again. James, I'm not asking you to make any big decisions, James said quickly. I'm just asking you to give me a chance to show you that I'm more than my family name or my trust fund. We could have dinner, maybe somewhere low-key where we can just talk. Maya found herself wavering. She genuinely liked James, enjoyed his company, and felt a connection with him that she couldn't deny. Sarah was right. His money didn't change who he was as a person. Okay, she said before she could change her mind. Dinner. But somewhere normal, not some fancy place where I'll need a translator for the menu. I know just the place, James said, and Maya could hear the smile in his voice. There's this little Italian restaurant in Little Italy that's been there for 60 years. Family-owned, amazing food, completely unpretentious. That sounds perfect. How about tomorrow night? 7 o'clock? Tomorrow's Tuesday, Maya said. I work until 6. 7:30 then? Okay, 7:30. After giving James the restaurant's name and address, they said goodbye. Maya sat on her couch for a long time afterward, wondering if she was making a mistake or the best decision of her life. Tuesday passed in a haze of anticipation and anxiety. Maya found herself checking her reflection constantly, changing clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans, a soft blue sweater, and the ankle boots she'd worn to coffee. She wanted to look nice without appearing to try too hard, a balance that proved more difficult to achieve than she'd expected. The restaurant James had chosen was everything he'd promised. Small, cozy, and filled with the kind of authentic Italian atmosphere that couldn't be manufactured. The walls were covered with family photos and vintage posters of Italy, and the air smelled like garlic, basil, and fresh bread. James was already waiting at a table when Maya arrived, and he stood to greet her with a warm smile. He looked handsome but approachable in dark jeans and a navy sweater. No trace of the expensive suits she now knew he usually wore. You look beautiful, he said, pulling out her chair. Thank you, this place is lovely. My college roommate brought me here freshman year. It became our go-to spot for celebrations, commiserations, and everything in between. The menu was extensive but not overwhelming, filled with classic Italian dishes that Maya actually recognized. She ordered chicken parmesan, while James chose the osso buco. So, James said after they'd ordered, how much of your afternoon was spent regretting agreeing to have dinner with me? Maya laughed, appreciating his directness. About half of it. The other half was spent trying to figure out what to wear to dinner with a billionaire. For the record, you chose perfectly. And also for the record, I'm not a billionaire. My family is, but I personally am not. What's the difference? The difference is that while I have access to more money than most people could spend in a lifetime, it's not actually mine. I work for the family business. I earn a salary, a very good salary, but still a salary, and I have some investments of my own. But the real money, the serious money, is controlled by my father and the family trust. Maya found this distinction interesting. Does that bother you? Sometimes, James admitted. It means I'm financially independent but not financially autonomous, if that makes sense. I can afford a nice apartment and a decent car and good restaurants, but I couldn't, say, quit my job and become a teacher without facing some serious consequences. What kind of consequences? Loss of access to family resources, disinheritance potentially, social isolation from the circles my family moves in. James's expression was matter-of-fact rather than bitter. The Wellington name opens doors, but it also comes with expectations. Their food arrived and Maya took a bite of her chicken parmesan. It was delicious. The chicken was perfectly tender, the sauce rich and flavorful, the cheese melted to perfection. "This is amazing," she said. "Wait until you try the tiramisu," James promised. "It's life-changing." As they ate, their conversation ranged from books to travel to childhood memories. Maya told James about growing up in a small town where her mother worked as a secretary at the local elementary school, and her father had been a mechanic until his death from a heart attack when Maya was 16. "I'm sorry," James said when Maya mentioned her father's death. "That must have been incredibly difficult." It was. He was the one who encouraged my art, who told me I could be anything I wanted to be if I was willing to work for it. Maya smiled sadly. He would have loved seeing me in Chicago, pursuing my dreams. "I think he'd be proud of what you've accomplished," James said quietly. In return, James told Maya about his childhood in Lake Forest, about private schools and tennis lessons and summers in Door County. But he also talked about the pressure he'd felt from a young age to live up to his family's expectations, the loneliness of never being sure if people liked him for himself or his name. "It sounds isolating," Maya observed. "It can be. I think that's why I value the friendships I've maintained since college. Those guys knew me when I was just another student trying to figure out his life." "Is that why you were alone in the hotel bar Thursday night?" James nodded. "The business partner I was meeting turned out to be someone who'd researched my family's holdings extensively and had a very detailed proposal for how I could help him acquire a failing restaurant chain. When I realized what was happening, I ended the meeting and went to the bar to clear my head. And instead you found me crying into my whiskey. Best, worst night I've had in years," James said, echoing his words from that first evening. By the time they'd finished dinner and shared the promised tiramisu, which was indeed life-changing, Maya felt much more comfortable with the situation. James had been open and honest about his background, but he'd also made it clear that his wealth didn't define him or their potential relationship. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said as James paid the check. "Anything." "Why me? I mean, you could probably date anyone you wanted. Why are you interested in someone like me?" James leaned back in his chair, considering his answer. "Remember what I told you about people showing you who they really are when they think no one's watching?" Maya nodded. "Thursday night, you were hurting and vulnerable, but you were still kind to the bartender. You asked about my problems even though you were dealing with your own. You didn't try to impress me or manipulate me or use me for anything. You were just yourself. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world?" Maya felt a flush of warmth at his words. "I wasn't trying to be anything special." "That's exactly my point," James said. "You weren't trying to be anything other than who you are, and who you are is someone I'd like to know better." As they walked out of the restaurant, Maya found herself feeling hopeful for the first time since learning about James's wealth. Maybe Sarah had been right. Maybe she was overthinking things. Maybe the connection she felt with James was real enough to overcome the differences in their backgrounds. "Would you like to take a walk?" James asked as they stepped onto the sidewalk. "It's a nice night, and I'm not ready for this evening to end." Maya looked up at the clear November sky, stars visible despite the city lights. "I'd like that." They strolled through Little Italy, then into the adjacent neighborhoods, talking about everything and nothing. Maya found herself relaxing completely for the first time in days, enjoying James's company without the constant background worry about their different worlds. "Maya," James said as they paused at a street corner to wait for the light to change, "I want you to know that I understand if this is all too much. If you decide you don't want to see me again because of my family situation, I'll understand." Maya turned to look at him. Studying his face in the streetlight, he looked vulnerable, uncertain in a way that made her heart ache. "James," she said, reaching out to touch his arm. "I'm not going anywhere. It's a lot to process, yes. But I like you. I like spending time with you. I want to see where this goes." Relief flooded James's features. "Really?" "Really, but I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. If there's something about your life that might affect us, I need to know about it up front. I can handle complicated, but I can't handle being blindsided." "I promise," James said solemnly. "Complete honesty from here on out." They had reached Maya's building, and she turned to face James fully. "Thank you for tonight. The restaurant was perfect, and I had a wonderful time." "Thank you for giving me a chance," James replied, "for letting me explain about my family." Maya found herself stepping closer to James, drawn by the warmth in his eyes and the sincerity in his voice. "James?" "Yes? I'm glad I met you that night in the bar, even though it was the worst night of your life. Especially because it was the worst night of my life," Maya said. "Sometimes good things come from terrible circumstances." James reached up to brush a strand of hair from Maya's face, his fingers gentle against her cheek. "May I kiss you?" Maya's heart raced as she nodded. James leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was soft and tentative at first, then deeper as Maya responded. She felt a jolt of electricity run through her, different from anything she'd experienced with David or any of her previous boyfriends. This kiss felt like a promise, like the beginning of something important. When they finally broke apart, Maya felt slightly dizzy. "Wow," she breathed. "Yeah," James agreed, his voice rough. "Wow." They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, both slightly stunned by the intensity of the kiss. "I should go upstairs," Maya said reluctantly. "You should," James agreed, but neither of them moved. Finally, Maya forced herself to step back. "I'll call you tomorrow? I'd like that. Or I could call you if you prefer. Either way, just soon." "Soon," James promised. Maya walked up the steps to her building, pausing at the door to wave goodbye. James waited until she was safely inside before walking away, and Maya watched from her window as he disappeared around the corner. That night, Maya lay in bed replaying every moment of the evening. The comfortable conversation, James's honesty about his family, the way he'd looked at her when he asked to kiss her, the kiss itself. She felt giddy and nervous and hopeful all at once. For the first time since David's betrayal, Maya found herself genuinely excited about the future. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work, conversations with James, and tentative steps into what felt like a real relationship. They saw each other several times a week: coffee dates, walks along the lakefront, dinners at small neighborhood restaurants. James kept his promise about honesty, telling Maya about his work at Wellington Enterprises, his complicated relationship with his father, and his mother's well-meaning but sometimes overwhelming attempts to manage his social life. Maya, in turn, opened up about her own family, her struggles as a freelance designer, and her dreams of someday opening her own studio. James was an engaged listener, asking thoughtful questions and offering encouragement without trying to solve her problems for her. The physical attraction between them grew stronger with each meeting. Their kisses became longer and more intense, and Maya found herself thinking about James at inappropriate times during her workday. But they hadn't slept together yet, both seeming to understand that they were building something that required a solid foundation. 3 weeks after their first dinner, James invited Maya to attend a charity fundraiser with him. "It's for the Chicago Children's Hospital," he explained during one of their evening phone conversations. "My mother is on the organizing committee, and she's been asking me to bring someone." Maya felt a flutter of panic. "James, I don't know. Meeting your parents feels like a big step." "It is a big step," James agreed. "But Maya, we've been seeing each other for a month now. I care about you, and I'd like my family to meet you. What if they don't like me?" "They'll love you," James said with confidence. "How could they not?" Maya wasn't so sure. She'd never moved in wealthy social circles, had never attended charity galas or made small talk with Chicago's elite. The thought of being surrounded by people like James's family terrified her. "What would I wear?" she asked, already mentally calculating the cost of an appropriate dress. "Whatever makes you feel comfortable and confident," James said. "It's cocktail attire, nothing too formal." Maya spent the next week agonizing over the decision. Sarah predictably thought she was crazy for hesitating. "Maya, the man is asking you to be his date to a charity event. This is not a problem. This is an opportunity." "An opportunity to humiliate myself in front of Chicago's wealthiest families," Maya countered. "An opportunity to show James's family that he's with someone amazing," Sarah corrected. "Besides, you've been dating him for a month. At some point, you're going to have to integrate into his world a little bit." Sarah had a point, Maya realized. If she wanted a real relationship with James, she couldn't hide from his family and social circle forever. She finally agreed to attend the fundraiser, then spent 2 days shopping for an appropriate dress. She eventually found a simple black cocktail dress at a department store sale. Elegant, but not flashy. Expensive enough to fit in, but not so expensive that she'd spend the entire evening worrying about spilling something on it. The night of the fundraiser, James picked Maya up in his BMW, looking devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo. Maya had spent an hour on her hair and makeup, trying to achieve a look that was polished but not overdone. "You look incredible," James said when Maya opened her apartment door. "I look nervous," Maya replied, smoothing down her dress. "You look beautiful," James insisted. "And Maya, just be yourself tonight. That's all you need to do." The fundraiser was held at the Palmer House Hilton, in a ballroom that Maya couldn't help but gape at. Crystal chandeliers hung from ornate ceilings, and round tables draped in white linen filled the space. Women in designer gowns mingled with men in expensive tuxedos, everyone holding champagne flutes and speaking in the cultured tones Maya had only heard in movies. "James!" A tall, elegant woman in her 50s approached them, her silver hair styled in a perfect chignon. She was beautiful in the way that expensive clothes, regular salon visits, and good genetics could make someone beautiful. And Maya immediately knew this had to be James's mother. "Mom," James said warmly, kissing her cheek, "I'd like you to meet Maya Rodriguez. Maya, this is my mother, Catherine Wellington." Catherine turned to Maya with a smile that seemed genuine, though Maya caught her taking in every detail of Maya's appearance in a quick, assessing glance. "Maya, how lovely to meet you," Catherine said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "James has told me so much about you." "It's nice to meet you too, Mrs. Wellington," Maya replied, hoping her nervousness wasn't too obvious. "Please, call me Catherine. Tell me, what do you do?" "I'm a graphic designer," Maya said, grateful that James had coached her on how to present her work in the best possible light. "I specialize in branding and marketing materials for small businesses." "How interesting," Catherine said, though Maya wasn't sure if she actually found it interesting or was just being polite. "James mentioned you're quite talented." Before Maya could respond, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s joined their group. He was tall and imposing, with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that suggested he was used to being the most important person in any room. "Dad," James said, and Maya could hear a subtle tension in his voice. "This is Maya Rodriguez. Maya, my father, Robert Wellington." Robert shook Maya's hand with a firm grip, his gray eyes, so similar to James's, studying her intently. "Miss Rodriguez," he said. "Welcome." His tone was polite but reserved, and Maya got the impression that Robert Wellington was withholding judgment until he knew more about her. "James tells us you're from Southern Illinois originally," Catherine said, filling the slightly awkward silence. "Yes, a small town called Carbondale," Maya confirmed. "I came to Chicago for college and decided to stay." "And your family?" Robert asked. "What do they do?" Maya felt her cheeks warm. This was exactly the conversation she'd been dreading. "My mother works as a secretary at an elementary school. My father passed away several years ago. He was a mechanic." She waited for the polite but dismissive response she expected, but Robert surprised her. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said, and his tone seemed genuine. "It must have taken a great deal of courage to leave everything familiar and build a life in Chicago." "Thank you," Maya said, feeling some of her tension ease. The conversation was interrupted by the announcement that dinner was about to be served. James placed his hand on the small of Maya's back, guiding her toward their assigned table. "That wasn't so bad," he murmured in her ear. "Your father is a little intimidating," Maya whispered back. "He's intimidating to everyone. It's his default setting." "But he seems to like you." Maya wasn't so sure about that, but she didn't have time to worry about it. They'd reached their table where 6 other people were already seated. James made introductions, a mix of business associates, family friends, and their spouses. Everyone was polite and welcoming, though Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was being evaluated. Dinner conversation flowed around topics Maya had little experience with: recent trips to Europe, renovations to vacation homes, children at prestigious boarding schools. Maya mostly listened, contributing when she could but feeling increasingly out of place. It was during the auction portion of the evening that Maya truly understood the world James came from. Items were being auctioned to raise money for the children's hospital, a week at a villa in Tuscany, a private dinner prepared by a James Beard award-winning chef, a shopping spree at Neiman Marcus. The bidding was casual but astronomical, with people spending thousands of dollars on items they clearly didn't need, simply to support the cause. When a weekend at a luxury resort in Napa Valley came up for auction, James raised his paddle. $5,000, he called out calmly. Maya's eyes widened. $5,000 was more than she made in 2 months at the diner. The bidding continued, eventually reaching $12,000 before James won the lot. "Congratulations," Maya said quietly, trying to keep the shock out of her voice. "It's for a good cause," James said with a shrug. "And I thought you might enjoy Napa Valley. Have you ever been wine tasting?" Maya stared at him. "James, you just spent $12,000 on a weekend trip." "I spent $12,000 on a donation to a children's hospital," James corrected gently. "The weekend trip is just a bonus." Maya nodded, but she felt like she was seeing James's world clearly for the first time. This was what wealth really looked like, the ability to spend more money than most people made in months without even thinking about it, to treat $1,000 donations as casual gestures. After the auction, there was dancing. James led Maya onto the dance floor, pulling her close as the orchestra played a slow song. "You've been quiet," he observed. "Just taking it all in," Maya said. "This is a lot. Too much?" Maya considered the question honestly. "I don't know yet. It's just so different from anything I've ever experienced. I know it can be overwhelming," James said. "But Maya, this isn't my whole life. This is just one night, one event. Most of the time, I'm just a guy who works too much and plays basketball on Sunday mornings. A guy who casually spends $12,000 on charity auctions," Maya pointed out. James was quiet for a moment. "Does that bother you?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "I mean, it's wonderful that you support charity, and I know you can afford it. It's just, that's more money than I've ever had in my bank account at one time." "Maya," James said, stopping their movement and looking directly into her eyes, "I need you to know something. My financial situation doesn't change how I feel about you, and I hope it doesn't change how you feel about me." Maya looked at him, really looked at him. Despite the expensive tuxedo and the elegant surroundings, James was still the same man who'd listened to her cry about her ex-boyfriend, who'd walked her to the L station to make sure she was safe, who'd remembered how she liked her coffee and asked thoughtful questions about her work. "It doesn't change how I feel about you," Maya said finally. "But James, we need to talk about how this is going to work. The practical stuff." "Okay," James agreed. "What kind of practical stuff?" Before Maya could answer, Catherine Wellington appeared beside them. "James, dear, I hate to interrupt, but there are some people I'd like Maya to meet." Maya spent the next hour being introduced to various members of Chicago high society. Everyone was gracious and welcoming, though she caught several curious glances and overheard a few whispered conversations about James's new girlfriend. By the time they were ready to leave, Maya felt emotionally exhausted. The ride back to her apartment was quiet, both Maya and James lost in their own thoughts. "What did you think?" James asked as he pulled up in front of her building. "Your parents seem nice," Maya said diplomatically. "Your mother is lovely, and your father was more welcoming than I expected." "But," Maya turned to face him, "James, I need to be honest with you. Tonight was hard for me. Not because anyone was unkind, but because I felt so out of place. I kept thinking about how much money was being thrown around so casually, and wondering what people were thinking about me being there with you." James's expression grew serious. "What were you thinking they were thinking? That I'm a gold digger, that I'm using you for your money, that I don't belong in your world." "Maya, that's not—" "Let me finish," Maya interrupted gently. "I know you don't think those things about me. But James, there are always going to be people who do. And there are always going to be situations like tonight, where I feel like I'm playing a role I don't understand." James was quiet for a long moment. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to figure out how to navigate this," Maya said. "Because I care about you, James, I really do. But I can't pretend to be someone I'm not. And I can't live in constant fear of not being good enough for your world." James reached over and took her hand. "You are good enough for any world, Maya. You're better than most of the people we met tonight." "That's sweet. But it's not really the point," Maya said. "The point is that we come from different places, and if we're going to make this relationship work, we need to acknowledge that and figure out how to deal with it. What do you want to do?" Maya squeezed his hand. "I want to take this slowly. I want us to spend time in my world as well as yours. I want to know that you can be happy with a simple life sometimes, and I want to prove to myself that I can handle the complicated parts of your life." "That sounds reasonable," James said. "And Maya, for what it's worth, I think you handled tonight beautifully. Several people mentioned how charming and intelligent you were." Maya felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. "Really? Really? My mother asked me when she's going to see you again." "What did you tell her?" "That I hoped it would be soon if I was lucky enough to convince you to keep seeing me." Maya leaned over and kissed James softly. "You don't need to convince me of anything. I'm not going anywhere." As Maya walked up to her apartment that night, she felt cautiously optimistic about her relationship with James. The evening had been challenging, but it had also shown her that James's feelings for her were genuine, and that his family was willing to give her a chance. More importantly, it had shown her that she was stronger than she'd thought. She'd survived her first foray into James's world with her dignity intact and her relationship stronger. Over the next few weeks, Maya and James made good on their promise to spend time in both their worlds. James came to the diner during Maya's shifts, charming Marcus and the regular customers with his easy conversation and genuine interest in their lives. He attended a local art show featuring Maya's work, where he mingled comfortably with her artist friends, despite being the only person in the room wearing a suit that cost more than most people's rent. Maya, in turn, attended a few more events with James, smaller gatherings mostly, dinner parties with his friends, a business reception where she met his colleagues. Each time was easier than the last, as Maya gained confidence in her ability to hold her own in any social situation. They also spent plenty of time alone together, cooking dinner in Maya's tiny kitchen, taking long walks through different neighborhoods, sharing stories about their childhoods and dreams for the future. The physical attraction between them continued to build, but they took their time, both understanding that rushing into bed would complicate an already complex situation. It was 6 weeks after they'd met that Maya finally invited James to stay overnight. They'd been to a movie followed by dinner at a small Thai restaurant in Maya's neighborhood. The conversation had been particularly intimate that evening, with both of them sharing deeper thoughts about their relationship and their hopes for the future. "I should probably head home," James said as they reached Maya's building, though his tone suggested he didn't really want to leave. "You don't have to," Maya said quietly, her heart racing at her own boldness. James stopped walking and turned to look at her. "Maya, are you sure?" I'm sure, Maya said, meeting his eyes steadily. I want you to stay. James's apartment was a spacious loft in River North, with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture. But Maya's studio felt more intimate, more like home. They made love slowly and carefully, both understanding that this was a significant step in their relationship. Afterward, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms in Maya's small bed, James traced patterns on her bare shoulder. I love you, he said quietly. Maya felt her heart skip a beat. They hadn't said those words to each other yet, though Maya had been feeling them for weeks. I love you too, she replied, turning to face him. James's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd say that. Were you worried I wouldn't? Terrified, James admitted. I've never felt this way about anyone before, Maya. You've changed everything for me. Maya kissed him softly. You've changed everything for me, too. They spent the rest of the night talking and making love, both feeling like they'd crossed an important threshold in their relationship. The next morning, Maya woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of James moving quietly around her small kitchen. She pulled on a robe and found him making breakfast, looking adorably domestic in his boxer shorts and undershirt. Good morning, he said, pulling her into his arms for a kiss. Good morning. You didn't have to make breakfast. I wanted to. Besides, I was hungry and your kitchen is surprisingly well stocked for someone who claims she can't cook. They ate breakfast together at Maya's small table, the morning light streaming through her windows and casting everything in a warm glow. Maya felt completely content, more at peace than she had in years. James, she said as they lingered over their coffee, I have something to tell you. That sounds ominous. Maya laughed. It's not ominous. I got a call yesterday about a potential job opportunity, and I wanted to discuss it with you. What kind of opportunity? A marketing firm downtown is looking for a senior graphic designer. It would be a full-time position with benefits, and the pay would be enough that I could quit my job at the diner. Maya, that's amazing. James's face lit up with genuine excitement. When do you interview? Monday morning. But James, there's something else. The position would require some travel, and the hours would be longer than what I'm doing now. It might affect how much time we can spend together. James reached across the table and took her hand. Maya, this sounds like an incredible opportunity. You should absolutely pursue it. Even if it means less time together? Even if it means less time together, James confirmed. Your career is important, and I want you to achieve your dreams. Maya felt a rush of love for James. David had always been threatened by her professional ambitions, making subtle comments about her unrealistic goals and her focus on work. Having a partner who genuinely supported her dreams felt revolutionary. There's one more thing, Maya said. The salary they're offering is really good, more than I've ever made. It would make me feel more equal in this relationship. James understood immediately what she meant. Maya, you've never been unequal in this relationship, not to me. I know you don't see it that way, Maya said, but it would make me feel better about myself, about my ability to contribute equally. Then I hope you get the job, James said simply. The interview went better than Maya had dared to hope. The marketing firm, Bennett & Associates, was looking for someone with exactly her skill set and experience. The creative director, a woman named Lisa Chen, seemed impressed with Maya's portfolio and asked thoughtful questions about her design philosophy and career goals. We'll be making a decision by the end of the week, Lisa said as the interview concluded. But I have to say, Maya, I'm very impressed with your work. You have exactly the kind of fresh perspective we're looking for. Maya left the interview feeling cautiously optimistic. She tried not to get her hopes up, but she couldn't help imagining what it would be like to have a career that challenged her creatively and paid her enough to live comfortably. 3 days later, she got the call offering her the position. Maya, Lisa's voice was warm and excited. We'd love to have you join our team. Can you start Monday? Maya accepted immediately, then called James to share the news. I got the job, she said as soon as he answered the phone. Maya, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I can't believe it. I keep thinking they're going to call back and say they made a mistake. They didn't make a mistake, James assured her. They recognized talent when they saw it. Maya gave notice at both her jobs, enduring Marcus's grumbling about losing his best waitress and promising to stay in touch with Sarah and her other friends from the diner. She also broke the news to her mother, who was thrilled to hear that her daughter had finally landed the kind of job she'd moved to Chicago to find. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," her mother said during their weekly phone call. "Your father would be over the moon." Maya started her new job the following Monday and immediately fell in love with the work. Bennett and Associates handled marketing for a diverse range of clients, from tech startups to established nonprofits to local restaurants looking to rebrand. Maya found herself working on everything from logo design to social media campaigns to complete brand overhauls. The pace was fast and the expectations were high, but Maya thrived in the challenging environment. Her colleagues were talented and supportive, and Lisa proved to be an excellent mentor who pushed Maya to expand her creative boundaries. The new job also meant changes in Maya's relationship with James. They saw each other less frequently during the week, since Maya was often working late and James had his own demanding schedule. But the time they did spend together felt more precious, and Maya found that having her own fulfilling career made her feel more confident in all areas of her life. 2 months into her new job, Maya was assigned to lead a major rebranding project for a chain of boutique hotels. It was her biggest assignment yet, and she threw herself into the work with enthusiasm. She was deep in concentration one Thursday afternoon when Lisa knocked on her office door. "Maya, can I see you for a moment?" Maya looked up from her computer where she'd been fine-tuning a logo design. "Of course. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I just wanted to talk to you about the hotel project." Maya followed Lisa into her office, wondering if there was a problem with her work. "Maya, I've been reviewing your progress on the Pemberton Hotels account, and I have to say I'm impressed, really impressed." Maya felt relief wash over her. "Thank you. It's been a challenging project, but I'm excited about the direction we're taking." "So am I, which is why I wanted to discuss the possibility of you presenting your concepts to the client yourself." Maya's eyes widened. She'd never presented directly to a client before. That was typically Lisa's role as creative director. "Are you sure?" Maya asked. "I mean, I'd love to, but this is a major account." "Which is exactly why I think you should present it," Lisa said. "Your concepts are innovative and well thought out, and you understand the client's needs better than anyone else on the team. Plus, Maya, you're ready for this. It's time to start taking on more leadership responsibilities." Maya felt a thrill of excitement mixed with nervousness. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she'd dreamed of when she'd moved to Chicago. "When is the presentation?" she asked. "Next Friday at 10. The client will be here, along with their executive team. It'll be about 20 people total." Maya spent the next week preparing obsessively for the presentation. She refined her designs, rehearsed her talking points, and created detailed mock-ups showing how the new branding would look across various applications: websites, signage, promotional materials, even hotel room amenities. James was incredibly supportive during her preparation, listening patiently as she practiced her presentation and offering thoughtful feedback on her concepts. "You're going to be amazing," he told her the night before the presentation. "Your ideas are brilliant, and you know this project better than anyone else." "I'm just nervous about presenting to such a large group," Maya admitted. "What if they hate everything? What if I mess up?" "Then you'll handle it professionally and move forward," James said. "But Maya, that's not going to happen. You've done incredible work on this project." The presentation went even better than Maya had dared to hope. The clients were engaged and enthusiastic, asking thoughtful questions about her design choices and nodding approvingly as she explained her strategic thinking behind each element of the rebrand. "This is exactly what we were looking for," the hotel chain's CEO said as Maya wrapped up her presentation. "Fresh, sophisticated, but still approachable. You've really captured our vision." Maya felt like she was walking on air as she left the conference room. Lisa was beaming with pride, and several of her colleagues congratulated her on a presentation well done. "Maya," Lisa said as they walked back to Maya's office, "I think it's time we discussed a promotion." Over dinner that night, Maya shared the details of her successful presentation with James. They were at a cozy bistro in Lincoln Park, celebrating Maya's professional triumph with champagne. "I'm so proud of you," James said, raising his glass in a toast. "To Maya Rodriguez, rising star of Chicago's advertising world." "It still doesn't feel real," Maya admitted, clinking her glass against his. "6 months ago, I was waiting tables and doing freelance work in my spare time. Now I'm leading major client presentations and being considered for a promotion." "You've worked incredibly hard for this," James pointed out. "You deserve every bit of success that's coming your way." As they walked back to Maya's apartment after dinner, James seemed unusually quiet. "Everything okay?" Maya asked as they climbed the stairs to her front door. "More than okay," James said. "Maya, I've been thinking about our relationship a lot lately." Maya felt a flutter of nervousness. "What about it?" "About how much you mean to me, about how you've changed my life for the better in every possible way." Maya unlocked her apartment door, but James caught her hand before she could go inside. "Maya," he said, his voice serious, "I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. You make me want to be a better person, and you make me believe that I can be more than just my family name or my trust fund." "James, you already are more than that," Maya said softly. "I am when I'm with you," James agreed, "which is why I want to be with you all the time." Maya's heart started beating faster. "What are you saying?" Instead of answering with words, James dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. Maya gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Maya Rodriguez," James said, opening the box to reveal a stunning but elegantly simple diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Maya stared at the ring, then at James's hopeful face, feeling like her entire world had shifted on its axis. "James," she whispered, "are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," James said. "I know we haven't been together very long, but Maya, when you know, you know. And I know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Maya felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes," she said, her voice barely audible. "Yes, of course, yes." James slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around as they both laughed and cried. "I can't believe this is happening," Maya said as James set her down. "Believe it," James said, kissing her deeply. "We're getting married." They spent the rest of the evening calling their families and friends to share the news. Catherine Wellington was gracious and welcoming, telling Maya how happy she was to have her joining the family. Robert Wellington was more reserved but still warm, expressing his approval of James's choice. Maya's mother was over the moon, crying happy tears over the phone, and immediately starting to plan a trip to Chicago to meet her future son-in-law. "I can't wait to meet him," she told Maya. "He must be something special to have captured your heart." "He is, Mom. He really is." Sarah, predictably, was ecstatic. "I knew it," she shrieked over the phone. "I knew from the moment you told me about meeting him in that bar that this was going to be something special." As Maya and James settled onto her couch later that night, Maya couldn't stop staring at her engagement ring. It was beautiful, but not ostentatious. Exactly what she would have chosen for herself. "How did you know?" she asked James. "Know what?" "Exactly what kind of ring I'd want. It's perfect." James smiled. "I may have enlisted Sarah's help. I called her last week and described what I was thinking, and she confirmed that you'd prefer something elegant but not too flashy." "You've been planning this for a week?" "I've been planning this since our second date," James admitted. "I just needed to work up the courage to actually do it." Maya curled up against James's side, feeling overwhelmed with happiness. "I love you so much." "I love you too," James murmured into her hair. "Forever and always." The next few months passed in a whirlwind of wedding planning, work, and adjusting to life as an engaged couple. Maya threw herself into her job with even more enthusiasm, earning her promotion to senior designer and taking on increasingly challenging projects. James, meanwhile, had started volunteering with the literacy program they'd discussed months earlier, finding the work incredibly fulfilling. Planning a wedding when one half of the couple came from enormous wealth and the other came from modest means proved to be its own challenge. Catherine Wellington had ideas about venues, guest lists, and vendors that reflected her social status, while Maya's mother had more traditional small-town expectations. "Maya, darling," Catherine said during one particularly fraught planning session, "the Chicago Botanic Garden would be lovely, but have you considered the Four Seasons? They do such beautiful weddings, and the ballroom would accommodate all our guests." All our guests had grown from Maya's initial list of 50 people to nearly 200. As James's family had extensive social and business connections they felt obligated to include. "Mrs. Wellington," Maya said carefully, "I appreciate all your suggestions, but James and I were hoping for something a little more intimate." "Of course, dear, but you understand that there are certain expectations when a Wellington gets married. People will be expecting invitations." Maya looked to James for support, and he immediately stepped in. "Mom, Maya and I want a wedding that reflects both of us. That means finding a balance between our different backgrounds and preferences." After several more planning sessions and a few tense conversations, they finally settled on a compromise. A ceremony at a beautiful historic mansion in Lake Forest, followed by a reception for close family and friends only. It was elegant enough to satisfy Catherine's social expectations, but intimate enough to make Maya comfortable. Maya's mother arrived in Chicago a week before the wedding, and Maya was nervous about how she'd fit in with James's family. She needn't have worried. Patricia Rodriguez was charming and gracious, and Catherine Wellington was genuinely welcoming. "Your mother is lovely," Catherine told Maya after they'd all had dinner together. "I can see where you get your warmth and strength." The wedding day itself was perfect. Maya wore a simple but elegant dress she'd found at a boutique in Wicker Park, and James looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves under a canopy of fall leaves, surrounded by the people who mattered most to them. "Maya," James said, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke his vows, "you appeared in my life when I least expected it and needed it most. You've shown me what it means to be truly known and loved for who I am, not what I have. You've made me believe in myself and in the power of genuine connection. I promise to love you, support you, and stand by your side through whatever challenges and adventures life brings us." Maya was crying by the time he finished, and her own vows were equally emotional. "James, you came into my life during one of my darkest moments and reminded me that I was worthy of love and respect. You've supported my dreams, challenged me to grow, and shown me what a true partnership looks like. I promise to love you with my whole heart, to build a life with you that honors both of our backgrounds, and to never lose sight of the extraordinary man I fell in love with in that hotel bar." The reception was intimate and joyful, filled with heartfelt toasts, laughter, and dancing. Maya's college friends mingled easily with James's business associates, and both mothers gave touching speeches about their children's happiness. As Maya and James danced their first dance as husband and wife, Maya reflected on how much her life had changed in the past year. She'd gone from crying into whiskey at a hotel bar, to dancing at her own wedding, from struggling to pay rent to having a successful career, from thinking she was unworthy of love to being married to a man who adored her exactly as she was. "What are you thinking about?" James asked as they swayed to the music. "Just how different everything is now. How different I am." "You're not different," James said. "You're just finally getting to be fully yourself." Maya smiled up at her husband. "I love the sound of that. Husband." "I love the sound of wife," James replied, spinning her around as the song ended. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave for their honeymoon in Italy, Maya felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She thought about that terrible night 8 months earlier, when she'd discovered David's betrayal, how she'd felt like her world was ending. Instead, it had been the beginning of everything she'd never dared to dream possible. "Ready to go, Mrs. Wellington?" James asked, offering her his arm. Maya looked around at their friends and family, at the beautiful venue, at the man who'd become her partner in every sense of the word. "Ready," she said, taking his arm and walking with him into their new life together. 6 months later, Maya was in her office at Bennett & Associates, putting the finishing touches on a campaign for a new client when her phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and saw James's name. "Hi, husband," she answered with a smile. "Hi, wife. Are you busy?" "Just finishing up a project. What's up?" "I have some news," James said, and something in his tone made Maya sit up straighter. "Good news or bad news?" "Definitely good news. Remember that literacy program I've been volunteering with?" "Of course." "Well, they've offered me a real position, as their program director." Maya felt excitement bubble up in her chest. "James, that's amazing. Tell me everything." "It would mean leaving Wellington Enterprises," James said, "taking a significant pay cut. But Maya, it would also mean doing work that actually matters to me, work that I'm passionate about." "What did you tell them?" "That I needed to discuss it with my wife," James said, and Maya could hear the smile in his voice. "But Maya, I want to do this. I want to take the job." "Then you should take it," Maya said without hesitation. "Even though it means less money? Even though my father is probably going to be furious?" "Especially because of those things," Maya said firmly. "James, you've spent your whole life living up to other people's expectations. It's time to live up to your own." There was silence on the other end of the line, and Maya wondered if she'd overstepped. "James, are you there?" "I'm here," James said quietly. I love you so much, Maya. Do you know that?" "I love you too. And I'm so proud of you for having the courage to choose your own path." "We might have to make some changes," James warned. "Downsizing, maybe. Living more simply." Maya laughed. "James, I lived in a studio apartment and took the bus to work when you met me. I think I can handle living more simply." That evening, James officially accepted the position as program director of the Chicago Literacy Initiative. He also had a difficult but necessary conversation with his father about leaving the family business. "I don't understand," Robert Wellington said when James broke the news. "You're throwing away everything we've built for you to work at some nonprofit?" "I'm not throwing anything away, Dad," James replied calmly. "I'm choosing to build something for myself." "And what about your responsibilities to this family, to this company?" "My responsibility is to live a life that has meaning," James said. "And this job, this work, it has meaning for me in a way that Wellington Enterprises never has." The conversation was tense and difficult, but by the end, Robert had grudgingly given James his blessing. Catherine, meanwhile, was completely supportive of her son's decision. "I'm proud of you for following your heart," she told James. "And Maya, thank you for encouraging him to pursue his dreams." A year later, Maya and James were settled into their new life together. James loved his work at the Literacy Center, and Maya had been promoted again, this time to creative director when Lisa Chen left to start her own firm. They'd bought a house in Lincoln Park, not as grand as the mansions James had grown up in, but perfect for the two of them. Maya had turned the spare bedroom into a home office where she worked on freelance projects in the evenings, and James had claimed a corner of the living room for the books and materials he used in his literacy programs. On the anniversary of the night they'd met, Maya and James returned to the bar at the Whitmore Grand Hotel. "Can I buy you a drink?" James asked as they settled onto the same bar stools where they'd first talked. "Only if you're prepared for me to tell you all my problems," Maya replied with a grin. "Lady, I've got all night," James said, echoing his words from that first evening. As they sat there, sharing a bottle of wine and reminiscing about their journey together, Maya marveled at how much had changed. She was no longer the heartbroken woman crying into her whiskey, and James was no longer the lonely billionaire looking for genuine connection. They'd become something new together, partners in the truest sense, two people who'd found in each other exactly what they'd been looking for, even when they hadn't known they were looking for it. "You know," Maya said as they prepared to leave the hotel, I should probably send David a thank you note. For cheating on you? James asked, confused. For being enough of an idiot to let me go, Maya said, taking James's hand. If he hadn't broken my heart that night, I never would have been in that bar. I never would have met you. James brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. Then here's to terrible nights that lead to beautiful beginnings. And to finding love in the most unexpected places, Maya added. As they walked out of the hotel together, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. It hadn't always been easy, navigating their different backgrounds, building careers they were passionate about, learning to be partners in every sense of the word. But every challenge had been worth it for the love they'd found together. She thought about the scared, heartbroken woman she'd been that night, and the confident, fulfilled woman she'd become. She thought about James, who'd found the courage to leave behind a life that looked perfect from the outside, to build something authentic and meaningful. Most of all, she thought about the power of connection, how two strangers could meet at their lowest points and lift each other up, how love could transform not just individuals, but entire lives. As they walked hand in hand through the Chicago streets, Maya knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And that made all the difference in the world. Their story had begun with one night, one drink, and one kiss caught by the wrong camera. But it had become something beautiful, something lasting, something real. Sometimes the best love stories begin with the worst nights. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you were really looking for. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, a stranger in a hotel bar can become the love of your life. Maya and James had found their happy ending, but more than that, they'd found their happy beginning. The start of a life built on love, respect, and the courage to be exactly who they were meant to be. What did you think of Maya and James's incredible journey from that fateful night in the hotel bar to their beautiful life together? Their story shows us that sometimes our worst moments can lead to our greatest blessings, and that true love sees past wealth, status, and background to the heart of who we really are. Which part of their story resonated most with you? Was it Maya's courage in pursuing her dreams, James's decision to choose meaning over money, or the way they supported each other through every challenge? Let us know in the comments what your favorite moment was. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed Maya and James's love story, and subscribe for more incredible tales of unexpected romance, personal growth, and the power of finding love when you least expect it. More amazing stories are coming your way, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you never miss out.